Hello, fellow Princeps! In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Legio Venator on the tabletop and the rules that come with this legion. Right off the bat, I've got to say I am a huge fan of the color scheme. I'm actually strongly considering painting my Knight Lancers up in this Legio's colors. I think it'll contrast really well with the blue energy shields. I've got to admit, I'm a little surprised there isn't more support for this Legion. They've actually got a really cool backstory, and like I said, the color scheme is quite nice. But I had a really hard time finding pictures, so if there's more Venator players out there, start snapping some pictures and post them online, I don't know, to Pinterest, Reddit, the comments section of this video, because I'm sure I'm not the only one who would love to see some more Venator Titans on the tabletop. After Defensor, this Legio was a breath of fresh air. There is something absolutely hilarious about picturing a giant metal robot fighting huge spiders. The lore just put a smile on my face just trying to picture this, and hopefully the pictures I put together did it justice. But let's get to the topic at hand and take a look at the rules for this Legio. Our first Legio trait is called Loyalty Above All, and this one's universal across every Titan in your mana pool. It'll affect them regardless of Titan class or how you build it. What it does is it allows all of your Venator Titans to ignore the Princeps Wounded critical damage. This is one of those critical damages that can really mess up your game plan, as there's a 1 in 6 chance you're going to force your Titan to shut down. Being able to ignore this is awesome, as it just keeps your mana pool moving consistently and you don't get any surprises thrown at you. On top of that, it actually allows you to add 1 to all your command checks for all your Titans within 6 inches of your Princeps and yours. As we keep going through the rules for the Iron Spiders, you're going to find this Legion likes to work really closely together and almost in clusters. So an added bonus to command checks for something you're probably already going to be doing, being within 6 inches, is awesome. Just take the freebie and run with it. Our next Legio trait is really what we get into what makes Venator unique. This one's called One Mind, and it lets you build squadrons of up to 2 with any Titan class built into your Venator mana pool. It's got a few restrictions with it. You can't squadron up Titans that are already part of a squadron, so I couldn't say do a Reaver and a Warhound if the Warhound's already in a squadron with another Warhound. If that makes sense. You're restricted to that too, and they can't currently be in squadrons. You're allowed to build these squadrons and take them apart at the end of each game round, so you've got tons of flexibility in terms of how you want to use those squadrons and what Titans you want to make them up. Another restriction of this is you do get the benefits of squadrons, but you're not allowed to merge your Void Shields. So you're still going to be benefiting from your squadron orders and coordinated strikes, but you can't merge the shields. Something to keep in mind with this is if you are squadroning, especially with expensive big Titans, this may end up hurting you in the activation game, so be careful, especially if you have a low model count with your squadrons. This gives you some great utility though with your list building, as you can make squadrons where you wouldn't be able to before, and we all know how beneficial that is on the table. It's also very true to the lore for Legio Venator. At the end of the Horus Heresy, this Legion was largely Reavers and Warhounds, and pre-Heresy, the Legio was known for working really well together in coordinated packs or squadrons as is, so fluffy with tons of utility for use on the table. Our third Legio trait, that's right, 3 traits for Venator, is called Mobile Force, and this is a great tool for list building once again. This allows you to select a Reaver Titan in place of a Warlord Titan if that Warlord is a mandatory component of your mana pool. This is solid. If you really like the rule for a mana pull, and say you're playing a low point match at about 1,000 points, and you just can't fit in what you want with that Warlord, then you can easily swap that Warlord out to a Reaver, which is a lot cheaper, and potentially still lets you to get your tricks off and what you're trying to do at a given point level. It also allows you to, say, take advantage of something like One Mind with Squadrons, and swap that Warlord out for, say, another Reaver, so you can have a Reaver Squadron or a Reaver and Warhound Squadron, since their mobility is going to pair up a lot better than, say, a Warhound with a Warlord, as their speeds are quite different. But to each their own, and this is just another great way of adapting your list to your point level and the needs of how your list performs. Our last Venator specific rule is actually a unique piece of war gear. These are called blind launchers, and it gives your Titan a -1 modifier for shooting its weapons, and it also gives your opponent a -1 modifier for shooting at you. You can buy this for any one of your Titans for 20 points, and this is essentially giving you the stratagem Blind Barrage for points instead of stratagem points, allowing you to free up those strategy points for something else that you might want to use in your list. The rules for this one are kind of a little contradictory, so correct me if I'm wrong in reading this. It says you can do or activate your blind launchers at any point in the Titan's activation, but then it also specifies that they're once per game, and you do this in the combat phase. So I think what they meant to say here is you can activate your blind launchers at any point in your Titan's combat phase activation. So you wouldn't be able to activate these launchers in, say, the movement phase. That would be how I play it. Either way, it's a pretty cool piece of war gear. I could see it definitely being handy for getting your Titans in position early game, depending on what mission you've drawn. Venator has a pretty solid rule set. Where they get kind of underwhelming is probably the Princeps traits. Our first Princeps trait is called Burning Hatred. This one's actually really good, but it could severely backfire on you depending on your list build. What it does is once per round after your Princeps causes critical damage on your opponent, you can actually shoot a weapon again an additional time, and that's chosen by you, the controlling player. After you've done that extra attack, though, you have to roll a d6 on the reactor overload table. This is what kind of scares me about this. Venator is probably going to be running in squadrons, and you're probably going to want your shields up. So, in rolling on that reactor overload table, you've actually got a 50% chance of either dropping your shields or taking a shot to the body. When it comes to your shields, this could really mess with your squadron's ability to defend themselves. But in the right situation, if you've got a weapon where you can target a specific location, say the location you just did critical damage on, and destroy that Titan, then this trait could be worth the risk. Crusade Veteran is a once per game Princeps trait. It comes at a cost of, after you use this ability, your Titan's limited to being activated either in the movement phase or combat phase. So a bit of a restriction there. However, after you've issued your Titan a emergency repair order, and you've rolled the die for it, you can immediately give your Princeps another order. This could actually be emergency repairs again, or you could do something like emergency repairs and split fire or burst fire. This allows you to really repair some critical damage on your Princeps Titan. Like, if that Titan's about to go down, you can essentially get a double activation out of your repair phase. Or sorry, a triple activation actually, because you could do your natural repair or damage control phase, emergency repairs, and then emergency repairs again. So this could be really powerful for you keeping your Princeps in the game, but it is once per game. Maybe you could get some better utility out of another trait than the once per game. Our last Venator trait is called Superior Tactician. This gives you an extra stratagem point just for selecting this as your trait on your Princeps. So if you've built a list and you have specific stratagems you want to use and can't afford based on the point level, well then I'd say take this as your personal trait and it'll allow you to get those stratagems. It's going to be pretty list dependent, but if you need it, it's nice to have the option to get those extra strategy points. Those were the rules, and this is my take at a Venator list. I'm going to base my list off of a Fortis Battle Maniple. This has a mandatory component of 2 Reavers and 1 Warlord. First thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the Venator trait Mobile Force, and I'm going to swap that Warlord to a Reaver. Because I have the points left and I want to take advantage of something else, I'm going to add another Reaver Titan to this mix. We're now going to use the Venator trait One Mind, which allows me to do squadrons, regardless of Titan type, up to 2. But bear in mind, these squadrons don't get to benefit from merging their Void Shields. Quite yet. The Fortis Maniple trait is called Titanic Fortress. I've got 2 squadrons and 2 Reavers here. This will allow those squadrons, provided they're in base contact, which they're squadrons, they're always going to be, and they did not move in the following movement phase. That's kind of situational. If those 2 conditions are met, then the Reavers of this list will not suffer the modifiers for structural damage, and they won't give the opponent bonuses for attacking in their rear and their flank. So these guys take a beating, I can just hunker them down and hold position, or if they're in a good firing position, and they can take advantage of that Titanic Fortress. Where this really augments Legio Venator, in particular with One Mind, is Fortis Maniples are allowed to merge Void Shields. You now have 2 fully functioning squadrons of Reavers. They are going to get the squadron orders, coordinated strikes, and will be able to merge their Void Shields. To top it all off too, you've got the Venator trait Above All, which allows you to get a handy bonus of +1 to your command checks when within 6 inches of the Princeps. So at least one of these squadrons is always going to be getting that bonus. And all of these Titans ignore the Princeps critical, or Princeps wounded critical damage. So you got some pretty tough little Reavers here. Alright, in terms of loadouts, bear in mind these are going to be 2 squadrons of 2 Reavers. More or less, each squadron is going to have the same kind of weapon loadouts. All of them are going to have missile launchers for shooting out of line of sight and shield stripping. They're all going to have blind launchers to at some point give them blind barrage, essentially. Each squadron has a chain fist, just in case something gets too close for comfort. They've all got a mix of laser blasters for the benefit of called shots where I need them, and if I really have to, shield baning for some shield stripping. And then we've got a few Melta cannons and a Volcano cannon in there, just for some template fun and some pretty severe anti-armor. The squadrons themselves kind of give this list an issue of activations. You've basically moved yourself from 4 activations to 2. So to kind of help mitigate that and prevent my opponent from just totally out-activating the list, I'm actually going to add in 2 groups of Lancers. I love these guys. They can take a hit, they are really scary when they get up close, and they have the speed to keep up with these Reavers quite well. I did toy around with the idea of not as many Lancers and upgrading all the Reavers with Bastion shielding, but I think just the fact that Reavers have decent Servitor clades and they're going to be squadroned, I don't think the shields necessarily are going to need the help. Plus, the Lancers have another added benefit of they can almost act as bodyguards and intercept things before they get too close to the Reavers. This list tops out at 1750, right on the nose, and as scary or as much duality as Enduring Hatred has, I probably will almost always run that as my Princeps trait. So, effectively what you end up having here are two individual battle groups that are going to act either the same or differently depending on the tabletop circumstance. On the tabletop, this list plays out kind of differently depending on the situation early game you're going to find yourself in, but luckily in the classic Venator way, we've got a lot of redundancies in here and different kind of SOPs for every situation. Say you're early game, turn 1, turn 2, and you actually don't have any good line of sight on your opponent's Titans. In this circumstance, you're going to want to issue full strides to your squadrons, and you're going to want to activate those blind launchers as soon as you can. This is going to make it harder for your opponent to deal damage to you as you reposition to get those better shots off late game. On the flip side, if you actually do have good line of sight on your opponent, then you're going to want to focus on first firing your squadrons early in the game just to drop your opponent's shields and start doing some damage where you need to. At some point, and this isn't really going to be a rush, you're going to want to activate those blind launchers when you find it's going to be beneficial for you. Say, turn 3 through 5, you kind of lose line of sight and you're afraid of your opponent outflanking or really putting the damage on your Titans. You could actually also find yourself in a bit of a hybrid situation where you're going to want to full stride one of these squadrons and first fire the other one. Just read the situation on the table and kind of see which would be more beneficial, whether it's the all-out order or a kind of hybrid approach. And obviously bear in mind as the game goes on, you have full flexibility with taking your squadrons apart if you need those extra activations. You also have the option of intercepting with your Knight Lancers or putting pressure where you need to. And again, you're getting full advantage of those squadron rules, the coordinated strikes, orders, and merging of shields. I think the list has quite a lot of tools to deal with virtually any situation you may find yourself in. The only thing I'm kind of concerned about is for a 1750 game only having 4 activations, you might find yourself getting outmaneuvered, but again, you've got the flexibility of splitting up and intercepting with the Lancers, so I think you got some ways around any potential issue. That was a look or snapshot of Legio Venator. Solid rules, solid color scheme. This Legion is really fun, especially for list building. I hope you've enjoyed the concept list. We've got to give credit where credit's due. The Reaver that's made an appearance here in a few slides, just like the lore video, goes to, I believe, a fellow from Goonhammer who was named Garrett John Condit Severson. So thank you, Mr. Severson, for being a legend and the only person to post a picture of a Venator painted Reaver, or Venator painted Titan, period, online. Hopefully everybody enjoys the slides and where I went with them. If you're a Venator player yourself, fire in the comments on how you're running them. There's definitely a lot of options out there. I could potentially see Squadron Warlord Titans being interesting, but again, the activation game could be pretty dangerous, especially for a heavier Titan. If you're not subscribed already, then hit that sub button, that way you'll know when your Titan Legio gets spotlighted. Hopefully everybody enjoyed this latest post in the Legion series, and I will catch everyone on the next video. Take it easy.